Hey, so this is part 2 of a series that talks about appropriated oppression and a theory for psychological liberation from oppression. If you missed the first segment, setting up appropriated oppression and how that's different or distinct from internalized oppression, check it out. This segment will focus on this theory of psychological liberation that I've developed. Fanon, Frere, other theorists created these ideas. I've put them together in a way that I hope will help clinicians in particular, but psychologists more generally, think about what does it look like for us to psychologically disentangle from, create some distance between ourselves and the oppression that we experience so we can be our full liberated selves. So the first stage is awareness. This might seem simple, but not everyone is aware of or acknowledges oppression. So oppression is a system that presses or restricts or immobilizes based on some aspect of identity. And it's important for us to be aware of oppression. I often say, like a fish in water doesn't know it's wet, we have to acknowledge the systems that are operating around us. That doesn't mean that we acquiesce or become complacent or accept, but we need to be aware of it and acknowledge it. Now, let me be clear, there are different stages, but it's not as if these are linear and you'll go from one to one to one to the other, or one to the next and be done. That it's cyclical and iterative. And so you might find yourself in one stage and then an event happens in your life and you go back to another. So the second stage is around acknowledging and being aware of the impact oppression can have on you as an individual. Frere talked about the importance of being aware of oppression so that you can be part of your own liberating force. Frere talked about understanding how we are hosts of oppression to be able to be part of our own midwifery process, to birth our liberation. And so this aspect, this stage is where you really start to think about how is oppression impacting me? And you want to get honest and real with yourself. So in the earlier segment, I talked about how for some people, they acknowledge the oppression they're experiencing and they take it on, they appropriate it, they pick it up, right? Oh, I'm lazy, I'm no good, or I'm incompetent. And others might notice and be aware of the oppression and work really hard to prove it. They might become perfectionists or overachievers or get lots of accomplishments to make sure people know that they're not one of them, right? So it could be one of those or about a million things in between, but really getting real with yourself about, okay, how am I impacted by oppression? How does it land on me? How does it then have me interact with myself and the world? This third stage is about the ability to see oneself as separate from oppression, so that you start to understand how oppression has landed on you, how it impacts how you show up in the world, and you start to be able to do some work to say, oh, that's oppression and that's me. And there's a theory that I use in this, or that I conceptualize that would be useful in this stage called cognitive diffusion. It's from acceptance commitment therapy, and it talks about how we become fused with ideas about ourselves. So if I think I'm incompetent, I become fused with that idea, like I am incompetent, and that we need to have cognitive diffusion, so that we need to be able to create some distance between our thoughts and ourself. So rather than I am incompetent, I can say, oh, look, there's that idea coming up that I'm incompetent. And if we can see oneself as separate from oppression, we can say, oh, there's that idea about me being incompetent that I've appropriated from oppression, and I don't have to pick it up. I can choose to see it, notice where it comes from, and know that that doesn't live inside me. This next stage is about the ability to see oneself in spite of oppression. And it's continuing the process of creating distance between self and oppression. A key component of this stage is developing some self-compassion. So self-compassion for oneself inside of the system of oppression. Self-compassion inside of oppression is a rare commodity. We can sometimes be really hard on ourselves, either for not doing enough, for not living up to what we think we need to be doing to counter oppression, or being able to overcome it. And so as we start to see ourselves as separate from oppression, we also need to start to develop a sense of self in spite of it and be compassionate with the fullness of who we are, rather than always trying to prove ourselves out of our oppressed status. This next stage is kind of in the real time, being willing to notice and reflect in real time how these different ideas come up. So this is a daily practice of noticing, reflecting, acting, maybe misstepping, noticing that, reacting, reflecting, and it's a commitment that we need to make daily to staying in the work of really wrestling with this idea of this diffusion, right? That we don't want to say, oh yeah, I could see myself separate from, and then we get in the habit of becoming fused again. We want to continue to do the work of being able to have that separation, get a sense of ourselves in spite of oppression, not just in reaction to it. And that's an everyday wrestle. This next step is about creating a new personal narrative. So before you were aware or acknowledged oppression, you might have seen yourself in the same way that the oppressor did. Then you start to notice, oh, there's this thing that's happening to me, it's separate from me, I need to see myself in spite of it, have some self-compassion, and wrestle with it on a daily basis. Then we come to, all right, then who am I? What am I? How do I get a sense of a new narrative for myself that's not in response to or in reaction to oppression, but that is me in my fullness? This stage is about developing new patterns and being intentional about those patterns, choosing action in a value-directed way, and continuing that reflection and creating distance between self and oppression. And this last aspect of this theory, I want to be clear, doesn't happen for everyone. This stage is about moving beyond oneself and having the ability to transform institutions and broader systems and work in a collective to do so. I think we might be better able to do that if we've done the work that comes before. But there are many people who need to, want to, desire to jump to transforming institutions and maybe haven't done the personal psychological reflection. And there's others that have moved through the personal psychological reflection and are not as drawn to collective action. And so I really want to leave room for flexibility in that everyone does not have to become a frontline organizer activist. Many times the personal and psychological liberation that one experiences leads you to want it for everyone and know that really we all deserve it. This stage is building on the personal new narrative that you've created to create a collective liberatory narrative for a whole group of people. So that's my theory of psychological liberation. What do you think? Does it make sense? Too academic? Let me know your thoughts. I have some interventions that I'm working on to try to test pieces of it, but does it make sense for you? Does it make sense for your life? Do you see yourself in these different stages? Give me your input and your feedback. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and thanks for hanging out and nerding out with me. I hope you enjoyed my research as much as I do.